TechCrunch had a scoop that gave us better insight into the Boring Company and the Loop, which is at the Las Vegas Convention Center, and how it operates. So using a public documents request, they got details about operations at the Loop, which opened in June. And among these was a ride script, which every new recruit had to follow when curious passengers asked questions. So basically, somebody asks you something, the Boring Company's like, here's exactly how you should respond. So among these, there were a lot of really funny ones that I found. But if somebody asks you what Elon Musk is like, you should be able to expect the answer, he's awesome, inspiring, motivating. And I just thought, on the one hand, this shows how
in that exact
same inflection. To me, I thought this struck me because it sort of seems like how tightly Elon wants to keep a grip on kind of his cult of personality in terms of being this, deity and mover and shaker and things. And particularly, I think this stands in contrast to, the ways that he unfortunately really does affect the Bitcoin price with his tweets and other things and sort of raises the stature of it. So there was a lot to unpack here, but I just personally found this story really interesting. And Naomi, I want to throw it to you for initial thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I know what the rest of the group is going to say because I was picking up bits beforehand of like, this is terrible, this is so controlled. And I'm going to push back a little bit on that messaging, right? Because we have to ask the question, are they spreading misinformation or are they just creating uniform messaging for their company? I mean, I don't know of any company that doesn't have like messaging standards where they say, don't talk about this, or like if someone asks this is kind of where you need to go. I think has been sensationalized a lot because it's Elon Musk, because he is such a cult of personality. I think everyone wants to read into it that, oh, well, he's such an egomaniac and he's controlling it. But honestly, I mean, it's a major company. Of course, they're going to be controlling their messaging. But the big question for me is whether it is misinformation. There were some little things that kind of like made me a little uneasy when they're talking about like safety records. But at the end of the day, I didn't see anything that was misinformation. It was just more like, if you want the actual numbers, go to the headquarters. That makes a lot of sense to me. If you have someone driving your car going really, really fast, you don't want them really thinking about like, well, what are the latest numbers that I've been keeping up to date with? Like, you want them to be concentrating on driving. That was something they mentioned in this document, like keep talking to a minimum, focus on the task at hand. Here are things you don't even have to think about that are pre-scripted. Like, I honestly, I kind of understand all that. And really my only question is whether they're just going with uniform messaging for the company, or whether they're actually being deceptive in the way they represent things, which isn't totally clear to me, but I'm erring on the side of they're not being particularly malicious in this regard. But Jen, I'll throw to you for your thoughts.
So just off the back of what you were saying, Naomi, if you're driving a car really fast and you need to concentrate on driving, do you want your drivers to be thinking about the exact right messaging that they have to say, rather than, actually maybe for any questions about Elon or any questions about how long the program has been in place, just direct them to the website? I feel like that would be a lot easier and actually accomplish the goal of the drivers not having to concentrate. It just, as I was reading through the list, I was like, these people need media training. Like, this is a lot to remember, and it's very specific, saying that Elon is a really great leader when maybe they don't believe that. Like, why do we have to tell the drivers to say he's a great leader? Maybe they've never met him and it's okay to say that. So it just felt...
I would be so surprised if they have met them, Jen. Like, I don't think these people have anything to do with Elon, have any idea of how he runs a company. Like,
so maybe, I don't know. I just feel like honesty is the best policy, and this feels a little extreme, but I'll pass it back off to you, Ben. I think I saw your hand go up.
David, take this one and then I'll jump in.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting, Jen, that you said media training, because I think that the unspoken part here is that a lot of this is actually intended to prevent journalists from getting in these cars and asking drivers questions and then getting material to use. And, like, that's worrisome only in the larger context. And I'm going to make a slightly complicated point here, but to get a little bit meta about what Naomi said, like the fact that them having uniform messaging makes news reflects some problems with Elon Musk's reputation. And this idea that he's so controlling is based on some real things. So, for example, Tesla actually closed its public relations department last year. It does not have anybody on staff to correspond directly with media. Musk is part of this much larger spectrum of Silicon Valley anti-media rhetoric that also includes people like Peter Thiel, who funded the lawsuit that shut down Gawker. So this is the larger context for what, from another person probably would be unremarkable, but for a Musk company speaks to some larger issues. So I think that maybe the reaction is the issue, if that makes sense. And I think that this is ultimately substantially about controlling reporting on the project, not so much about
I think
the public getting into the cars and asking questions.
Yeah, I think it's a weird one in terms of my sort of irksome sensibility on this is more so about the control of information and like who gets to speak and who's in positions of power, right? Like I think NDAs are absolutely absurd. I think that Silicon Valley relies way too heavily on them, but I think workers should be able to talk about their experiences and they should be able to like have a free flowing dialogue with an individual they're engaging with and not, be essentially treated as automatons and just, do one thing, say one thing and everything else. And that's like where my frustrations with this come from, because like Elon gets to pop up on Twitter and say whatever he wants and cause financial distress, cause financial gains, do whatever. But literally, you can't say anything other than, yep, he's a great leader. He motivates us to do great work when asked like if he's engaged with a company or what somebody's experience might be. And that to me, I think is just quite a frustrating ideal when you're talking about like any form of free speech or trying to control what anybody has to say, particularly when the power dynamic is so like unequal when it comes to particularly these individuals and Elon Musk.
Yeah, just as I wrap up here, I will just say we don't want to be as presumptuous to think that it's Elon who's directing this. It could even be Elon's outspokenness on Twitter that's causing the company at large to say, let's clamp down on messaging because he's already done so much damage.